Inshallah, we have a lot of empty seats in the front over here if any of the sisters in the back want to come sit. And just a quick announcement before we start. The program in here is the program. The M is in the hall to the right. So in here we'll be doing the English program. To our respected scholar, to all the brothers and sisters in attendance, Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. We welcome you all to the first night of our Muharram program, where we gather to commemorate and honor the life and sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Today our focus is on the transformative power of the month of Muharram. Throughout history, this month has served as a catalyst for change, inspiring many individuals to stand up against oppression and injustice. Together, we'll go through the significance of Muharram and how it can transform our lives. We begin our program by seeking blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us listen attentively as Brother Ali Rida Makki recites some verses from the Holy Quran. If we can all welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ثانية على حب الزهراء.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
طيب إن شاء الله خير. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كافها يا عين صاد. ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا إذ نادى ربه نداء خفيا قال ربي إني وهن العظم مني واشتعل الرأس شيبا ولم أكن بدعائك ربي شقيا وإني خفت الموالي من ورائي وكانت امرأتي عاقرا فهب لي من لدنك وليا يرثني ويرث من آل يعقوب واجعله ربي رضيا يا زكريا إنا نبشرك بغلام اسمه يحيى لم نجعل له من قبل سميا قال ربي أن يكون لي غلام وكانت امرأتي عاقرا وقد بلغت من الكبر عتيا قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين وقد خلقتك من قبل ولم تك شيئا قال رب اجعل لي آية قال آيتك ألا تكلم الناس 3 سويا فخرج على قومه من المحراب فأوحى إليهم أن سبحوا بكرة وعشيا يا يحيى خذ الكتاب بقوة وآتيناه الحكم صبيا وحنانا من لدنا وزكاة وكان تقيا وبرا بوالديه ولم يكن جبارا عصيا صدق الله العلي العظيم. إلى محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you, Brother Ali Rida, for the beautiful recitation. Tonight, Sayyid Ali Musawi will delve into the depths of Muharram and will shed light on tonight's topic, Muharram, the month of transformation. His insights will guide us on a journey of introspection and change, and will enlighten us on how we can use this blessed month to bring about positive changes in our lives. Please welcome Sayyid Ali Musawi with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
ثانية على حب الزهراء صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. حب الحسين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم. I wanted to first begin, dear brothers and sisters, by mentioning that it's really an honor for me to be amongst you on these holy nights and these holy days. These are nights which they have powerful potential. They have the ability to take us from her to a completely different person. So it's really an honor and it's really a blessing to be in this city amongst this community on these nights. Another point that I wanted to mention is that whenever these nights of Muharram come, it always reminds me that there were people years that were with us that are no longer with us this year. I wanted to remember them on this night. If you could recite a surah Fatiha on their behalf after reciting a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal faraj. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, do you know who he was calling to? They say that he wasn't calling to those individuals that were there because they had already slaughtered all of the Ahlul Bayt. They have already slaughtered all of the Ashab. There was no one left. They say that the Imam was actually calling out into time to those who would hear that call in the days after the Shahada, the weeks after the Shahada, the months after the Shahada, the years and the centuries after the Shahada. In reality, they say that that call of the Imam, he was calling out to all of us. He was calling out to all of you. And he was asking that simple question, are you ready to join my cause? This Muharram, my brothers and sisters, we receive another opportunity where we hear the call of the Imam. And he's asking each and every one of you, are you willing to join this cause of mine? And we have a choice to make. This Muharram, these days that are coming, we have a choice to make. Whether we answer that call or whether we stand on the sidelines. And we know that on the day of Karbala, many stood on the sidelines and they simply watched. Joining the cause of the Imam, my dear brothers and sisters, there are some conditions that it has. One of these conditions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He makes it very clear in the Holy Quran, is that if you want to join the cause of the Imam, you want to reform the society, you want to stand against the tyrants of your time, then you have to begin by working on what is within yourself. The weaknesses, the issues that cause a separation between you and your Imam. Allah says that I need you to first begin there with those points. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the verse, He says it very beautifully. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will never change the condition of a people until and unless they change what is within themselves. This is the primary condition of revolution. This is the primary condition of changing what is outside. It has to begin with changing what is inside. That fire that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed within the hearts of each and every one of us, He has placed it in order that we begin this process of transformation, this process of change. One of the things that we find when we look at Islamic history, in reality, when we look at human history, we find that many times before any of these events, such as Karbala, such as Saqifa, such as the rise of Islam, we find that before any of these events happen, the people that were living before that time, they always felt that they were ready for whatever was to come. It's one of the interesting things about us as human beings, that we tend to overestimate who we are. We tend to believe that we have many beautiful characteristics, and that we are ready for the Imam. If only you will come, Ya Imam, I'm ready. I will join your cause. We find that when Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he rose, the people of that time, they had the exact same idea that maybe the people of our time have. When the Imam rose up, one of the things that they quickly realized is that they had underestimated themselves. That readiness that they felt inside, it quickly dissipated. There was a very famous scholar, and this comes after Karbala, of course. But one day he was sitting, probably around this time of the year, looking at the stories of the shuhada, the companions of Imam Hussein. And he began to think to himself that if only I was alive during the time of the Imam, I would have joined him, I would have been amongst his companions. This individual, he says that night that I was thinking these thoughts, I fell asleep. He says, suddenly, I saw myself in the dream world. I was having a dream. And when I looked, I realized that I was on the plains of Karbala. He says, I was looking. I realized that it wasn't just Karbala. He says, I realized it was the day of Ashura. He says, I looked up. It wasn't just the day of Ashura. He says, it was the time of Salat al-Dhuhr. Many of you know the famous story that on the day of Ashura, when the time of Salah came, some of the companions, they said, Ya Imam, you go ahead and you do your Salah, you pray. We will stand in front of the enemy, and if they shoot arrows, we will block those arrows from striking you. You know, when we look at the enemies of Imam Hussein, they wouldn't even allow him 2 minutes of time to pray. He just wants to speak to Allah. This scholar, he says that suddenly I see myself, it is the time of Dhuhr, and he says, I am standing in front of my Imam. He says, I'm looking out. I see 30,000 enemy forces. The fear was palpable. I had never felt this kind of fear before in my life. He says, as the Imam, he says, Allahu Akbar. He begins his prayer. He says, I'm looking and I see one of the enemy forces. He begins to notch an arrow into his bow. He says, I saw him. He begins to pull back on the bow. As he is pulling back on the bow, suddenly I see the arrow. It begins to fly through the air. It is traveling towards me. He says, no matter how much I wanted to block that arrow from striking the body of Imam Hussein, he says, I couldn't help it. He says, I moved out of the way and I felt the arrow strike that blessed body of the Imam. He says, I was looking and I see another enemy. He begins to pull back on his arrow as well. He says, as I am looking, I said, this time I am going to absorb that arrow. There is no way that I am going to allow the arrow to strike the body of my Imam. He says, as I saw that arrow traveling through the air, I saw that sharp point. I could feel it, that if it strikes me, how much pain would there be? He says, the love that I had for myself, it prevented me from being able to absorb that arrow. He says, I moved out of the way again and I hear the arrow strike the body of my Imam. He says, suddenly I woke up. And I sat there for a very long time thinking to myself that for all of these years you have served the cause of the Ahlul Bayt. You thought that you were ready for the movement of your Imam. But now you see that the love that you have for yourself, it is more than the love that you have for your Imam. My brothers and sisters, we see this repeated throughout Islamic history. Individuals pushing the Ahlul Bayt, Ya Imam, when are you going to rise up? The Imam would rise up, those same individuals would pull back. This is such a potent lesson for me and you. That we sit and we do dua, Ya Imam, come please, we are ready for you. But on these days of Muharram, we have to ask ourselves, are we truly ready? Are we truly ready? You know, there was a movement called the movement of the Tawwabin. Many of you have heard the name of this movement. The leader of this movement that rises up after Karbala, It was an individual that during the time of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, they approached the Imam with a lot of haste. They said, Ya Imam, why have you made a peace treaty with Muawiyah? You know, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, when he saw that the number of his companions was low, that their loyalty was not sufficient, he made a peace treaty with Muawiyah. Those leaders of the Shia, the elite, they approached the Imam and they said, Ya Imam, we've been waiting for such a long time to rise up. How could you make this treaty with such an evil individual? The Imam told him that the Shias are not yet ready. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam rose up, you know, one of those individuals that fails to join the Imam, do you know who he was? It was this same person that had approached his brother Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Later on, he becomes part of the movement known as the Tawabin. And the Tawabin, in reality, they were so broken over their failure to join the Imam that they didn't even care really about any political gains, any land gains. They just wanted to fight, and they just wanted to be martyred so that that stain of failing their Imam was wiped away. My brothers and sisters, Muharram, it is really the month of change and transformation. That's what it is designed for. When we gather, we cry, we mourn, we beat our chests. What Allah is really allowing us to do, He is allowing us to reflect on who we are inside. Ya Allah, are we worthy right now that if your Imam was to come, would we be able to join him? Or would history be repeated once again? That's something that we really need to reflect upon, we really need to think about. And my brothers and sisters, change, becoming better, it's a gradual process. It's something that every single day when I wake up and I hear the call of the Imam, is there anyone who can come and join us? I answer, yes, Ya Imam, I am here. And I make a choice that those sins that are going to create that division between me, that are going to weaken my soul, I'm going to say no to those sins. Those good actions that are going to allow me to grow, I'm going to say yes to those actions. I'm going to move towards that. My brothers and sisters, I just wanted to advise on a very simple point. At least for these 10 nights that we have, if there is any sin that is following you, if there is any issue that is causing a division between you and your Imam, at the very least, for these 10 nights, put that sin aside for the sake of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Sometimes people say, I can't let go entirely. At least for these 10 nights, put that sin aside. Say, Ya Allah, give me the strength to not do anything which will break the heart of Imam Hussein. Anything which will break the heart of Imam al-Hujjah. Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us all the tawfiq of really growing and becoming from those Shias that will make the Ahlul Bayt really proud to see us. On a night like this, I wanted to mention another point, because we were on the subject of change and transformation. When we as Shias are asking the question, what does it mean to change and transform? Sometimes the question is a little bit difficult. Of course, one angle of it is the sins that maybe sometimes we commit. But I wanted to show you it maybe in a slightly different way, so that it becomes easier for us to see what sin is and what good deeds are. The secret of what growth is, of what transformation is, we actually find it from who? From the lady Zainab alayha salam. There is a point after Karbala when Sayyida Zainab, she says something very strange. She says when somebody asks her, how did you see what happened in Karbala? She responds by saying, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. She says, I saw nothing but beauty. Question: what was beautiful about Karbala? Because when we read the accounts of Karbala, when we see what was happening to these individuals, these shuhada, it's heartbreaking. And we find that even Zainab alayha salam, she was weeping. She was mourning. So what does it mean when she says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila? The answer, my brothers and sisters, is that there are two ways that we can look at the world. One way, which is the way that we typically look at the world, is looking at the world from the perspective of materialism. Meaning that when I look at the world around me, I see this body that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me, and I begin to identify who I am in this dunya. For example, I say that I am from this country. I am, for example, a doctor. I am, for example, wealthy or poor. I am, for example, handsome or ugly. I begin to identify myself with that individual that I see in the mirror. But the truth of it, and what Zainab alayha salam, she saw on the plains of Karbala, it was something beyond that. What did she see? She saw individuals reaching a level of spiritual beauty, spiritual perfection that was so beautiful that words have a difficult time explaining what Zainab saw on that day. One of the ways that we can really explain this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has given us two parts. Yes, on one hand, He has given us the physical body that you see. But on the other hand, He has fused with this physical body what is known as the soul. And the reality of who I am, the real me, is the soul that is inside. Because when Malakul Maut, and I know many people, they are very scared of Malakul Maut. Inshallah, we're going to get an opportunity to speak a little bit more about death. When Malakul Maut comes and he grabs the soul of that individual, he's separating the real you from that part which is going to decay on this earth. This body, it's not the real me. Why? Because when Malakul Maut comes, he takes the real me and I shed the physical body and I go somewhere else. One of the ways that we can understand the soul, what it looks like, what we do to it, what Zainab alayha salam saw on the day of Ashura, I just want you to imagine that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He comes to you and He gives you an amount of clay. Just imagine. He's given you a pile of clay and He says that I want you to begin sculpting that piece of clay and I want you to see what you end up creating with this clay. And you begin to form that clay. You give it maybe a head, you give it a body, you give it arms, you give it legs. Sometimes the movement that you make, it beautifies it, it makes it look good. And sometimes you are maybe in a different state, you make some mistakes, you disfigure it. My brothers and sisters, the soul that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to me and you, that's exactly what it is. It's almost like putty, that from the time that we reach the age of taklif, every time we do a good action, we are beautifying the soul. It's growing It's becoming so beautiful. And every time we commit a sin, we are disfiguring the soul. We are creating something very ugly. And one day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is going to come and He is going to say, your time is up. Let me see what you've created. Let me see what you've done with all of this time that I have given to you. And then we will give up that creation, that soul. We will say, Ya Allah, this is what I have made. And it's either going to be incredibly beautiful, or it's going to be incredibly ugly. My brothers and sisters, Muharram is really the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He opens our hearts. He allows us to change in ways that we maybe thought were not possible before. Insha'Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us all the tawfiq of changing, of growing, of utilizing these days and these nights. And insha'Allah, we can become someone that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salam, they can be proud of, insha'Allah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
ثانية على حب الزهراء صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
No, I'm plugging it here. صلى على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل. ثانية على حب الزهراء صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ثالثة لتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمن صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. If you can give one more salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, Allah rewards you all on the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and the tragedy that the Ahl al-Bayt went through on the day of Ashura. I'd like to give short reminders, inshallah, before we enter into the majlis. Our ulama and our urafa, the mystics, they talk about shedding tears for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. To come in with a very strong intention, inshallah. Inshallah, to come in with a very strong intention into these majalis. And shedding tears for the Ahl al-Bayt alayhi salam, they say, is very, very precious and it's very special. What's contingent with the tears, inshallah, is action. When action comes with those tears, inshallah. We don't want to cry for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and not leave these majalis the same people that when we came in. We want to change, we want to grow. We get forgiveness, inshallah, through the tears, but we want it to translate into softening of the heart. We want it to translate into our daily lives, inshallah. To be people who are closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who are paying closer attention to the wajib and haram. They say that when you come into the majlis of Abu Abdullah, if you have a hard time shedding some tears, at the very least, put your head down. Put your head down in grief. Fake cry, they even say. They say to these kinds of extents, try to show grief or some sort of mourning for Abu Abdullah, and they say that you get the same reward, inshallah, as if you were crying. So it's very important to shed tears in these nights, and we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can have mercy, a special type of mercy on all of us within these majalis. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ثانية على حب الزهراء صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. And one more reminder, one of the ulama has also said, if you have a hard time shedding tears for Abu Abdullah, maybe, I'm not saying this is the reason, but maybe it could be due to sins and shortcomings with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which hardens the heart. So what's recommended to do when you come into the majlis,
before the majlis starts or before you get into the mode of listening to majalis, do istighfar. So take 5 to 10 seconds, inshallah, to do istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this, inshallah, will wipe away any shortcomings and soften the heart before we begin. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. Peace and blessings be upon you, Ya Rasulullah. Peace and blessings be upon you, Ya Aba Abdullah. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon the Ahl al-Bayt. It was in their homes that Allah blessed us with guidance and revelation, and upon them descend the angels day in and day out. Everybody together. Ya Habibi, Ya Hussein, Nur Aini, Ya Hussein. يا حبيبي يا حسين نور عيني يا حسين. Our beloved Hussein, light of our eyes, Hussein. يا رحمة الله الواسعة يا حسين. O vast mercy of Allah, Hussein. Imam, accept us on these nights as we have come to renew our allegiance and join your caravan, carrying our sins on our backs. You called for a supporter, and here we are at your service, Ya Hussein. These majalis are held for Aba Abdullah. Imam al-Rida has once said, let the weepers weep over someone like Hussein, for verily weeping over him reduces the burden of great sins. Then he continued saying, as soon as the month of Muharram would set in, my father was never seen laughing, and he would be overcome by sadness until after the first 10 days had passed. When the 10th day dawned, it was a day of grief and sorrow and crying for him, and he used to say, this is the day when Hussein was martyred. There's another narration from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. He once asked Fudayl, his companion. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq asks him, he says, do you sit down and hold discussions? Fudayl replied, yes, my Imam, may I be your ransom? The Imam replied, I love these gatherings. Ya Fudayl, revive our cause. May Allah have mercy upon those who revive our cause. We gather in these tragic nights to revive the legacy of the heroes of Karbala. These are the gatherings Imam as-Sadiq approved of, and the ones he prays for. These are the gatherings that Sayyidah Fatima attends. On these nights we extend our condolences to the Holy Prophet, to Imam Ali, to Sayyidah Fatima and the rest of the holy progeny, especially our master and awaited Savior, Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Many of us wonder why we cry in these nights. It has been narrated that Imam Ali has once said, I entered upon the Holy Prophet and his eyes were flooded with tears. I said, Ya Rasulullah, has anyone angered you? Why are your eyes filled with tears? The Holy Prophet replied, Jibreel alayhi salam just left me, telling me that Hussein will be killed by the Euphrates River. Jibreel asked me if I want to smell the dirt of his burial plot. The Prophet replied, yes, and Jibreel reached and grabbed a handful of dirt and gave it to me. I could not help it, and my eyes began to flow with tears. Prophet Muhammad cried for Hussein. Our prophets cried for Hussein, so we cried for Hussein. Imam al-Sadiq says, surely those who cry or attempt to cry or help others cry over Aba Abdullah will be rewarded in heaven. My brothers and sisters, we are here to cry and learn from Hussein, to stand with the Hussein of our time. Take your hearts to the Imam of our time, Imam al-Mahdi, our beloved Imam. In what condition have you welcomed this month, and in what grief are you spending your nights? Our beloved Imam, if only you saw the sight of your family on the plains of Karbala. Oh Muharram, have mercy upon his heart when he remembers his family torn apart. When by the Euphrates River he lies dead, another, the spears of Umayyah, raise his head. Yet the greatest tragedy that we recall are the women and children standing with no help at all. Our beloved Imam, if only you seen the tents as they were burning on the plains. That very fire of the tents has lit a fire in all of our hearts. If only you'd seen the children asking their auntie Zainab about their father or brother or uncle Abbas. If only you'd seen the way our beloved auntie Zainab was treated by the whips of Yazid's men. Our Imam, during these nights, where do you spend your time? Near which grave do you sit? And in what condition do you see the shrine? Peace be upon your sorrowful heart when you walk towards her land and you sit beside her grave. You begin to kiss her sand. Ya Zainab, look and see upon your grave is your Mahdi. He is your Abbas, O Zainab, that has come to set you free. But my master, we all know the pain you experience once you make your way to Karbala. And Ziyarat al-Nahiya, Imam al-Mahdi has said, but as I have been hindered by the course of time, and as by Allah's decree has prevented me from helping you, and as I could not fight those who fought you, and was not able to show hostility towards those who showed hostility towards you, I will therefore lament you morning and evening, and will weep blood in place of tears out of my anguish for you, and my sorrow for all that befell you. Our hearts should be present with the Imam of our time in these tragic nights as he relives the tragedy of Karbala, as he makes his way to the holy land of Karbala, awaiting the day he will bring justice for that massacre and restore the world with peace and justice. We pledge our allegiance to the Imam of our time, to defend him and pave the way for his return. We send our salutations to you, Ya Hussein, but not any type of salutations, the one that Imam al-Mahdi himself sends upon you, where he says, salutations from the one who had been present. Had he been present with you on the plain, would have shielded you from the sharpness of the swords with his body and sacrificed his last breath for you. This is the start to the nights of mourning Aba Abdullah. This is the start to the nights of shedding tears, brothers and sisters. This is the night to start service to Imam al-Hussein. This is the start of the nights to ask for forgiveness. This is the start of the nights to turn back to Allah. This is the start of the nights to pray for one another and the oppressed. This is the start of the nights to changing destiny through the Ahl al-Bayt. This world is darkness and Hussein is light. This world is darkness and serving is light. If you don't love Hussein, then life has no aim. If you don't have Hussein, then you will go insane. And then we'll see that Hussein was the key. That Hussein was the key. I am broken and I need a hand. Allah saved me and gave me Hussein. Allah saved me and gave me Hussein. دنيانا ظلام والخدمة ضوى. دنيانا ظلام والخدمة ضوى. الما يمشي حرام تبري تهوى. Everyone together. الما عند حسين آخر تلوان. الما عند حسين آخر تلوان. تاليها يصير والماكو سواه. من حق يهيم محبوبي رحيم. ما يرضى يجي يمشي لهواه. يمشي لهواه. ما حد مثل قلب الحنين ورحمته. عسى الذي خيام اخته تنزل دمعته. وانطان خيمه وهو طاحت خيمته. ذبحني هاب خنصر يمينه والسهام. بعيوني ألام وضرتها على الخيام. بعيوني ألام وضرتها على الخيام. جميعا حسين 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 مولا حسين 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 مولا حسين 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 مولا حسين حسين حسين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا على بيت محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. To Allah we belong and to Him is our return, and soon the oppressors will know what change their affairs will take, in the end times will be for the righteous, Ya Allah. In the name of Hussein, by the right of Hussein, by the thirst of Hussein, Ya Allah, we ask you to forgive our sins. We ask you to allow us to shed tears and make a change through these majalis. We ask you to give us a good end on the path of truth. We ask you to fill our hearts with the love of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. We ask you to cure our sick ones and forgive our deceased, Ya Allah. We ask you to bring victory and relief to the oppressed all around the world, specifically those in Palestine, Ya Allah. We ask you to hasten to return of our Imam Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman, and to make us among his loyal supporters, Ya Allah. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.